children, it's Grandma Carla, and I'm in the car with my daughter, Esther. Say hello to everybody,
Hi.
Esther. And we are driving to Mississippi to pick up my other daughter from college. And I wanted to get one more story in before it got too dark to read. So tonight, I'm reading to you Missionary Stories with the Millers. And I'm enjoying these a lot. I hope you are too. I'm reading more of these because my grandchildren have requested more missionary stories. So tonight we're going to read a story about Mama Lillian. And this is a story from Egypt. So I'm going to show you the map here. You see the dark country there? There's an arrow. That's not Egypt. There's the arrows pointing to Egypt. And Egypt is in the continent of Africa. Mama Lillian. "Lady, you must take this baby," ordered the old Egyptian woman. "I don't want it. She's only a girl." Lillian, the missionary, stared at the old woman in dismay. Answering an urgent cry for help, she had come tonight to this poor hut just in time to watch a young Egyptian mother die, leaving her tiny, half-starved baby. The baby's tiny body was not much more than a skeleton already. If her mother was dead and her relatives didn't want her, Lillian was afraid that the baby had no chance to live. Lillian lived in a small mission house with several other Christians, and there was not much room for a stray baby. But what other choice did she have? The child could not be left to die. "Lord, what should I do?" the young missionary prayed as she walked homeward down the dirt road, carrying the poor, thin baby. And all at once the answer came. "This is why I have called you to Egypt. You must start a Christian orphanage for children of Egypt who have no homes." Lillian obeyed the Lord's direction. A few days later, she rented a house with some of the last money that she had brought with her from America. With Farida, the tiny Egyptian baby, she moved into the house. Soon the word spread about this Christian lady who was kind enough to take the children that other people didn't want, and more children came to the little orphanage. Many times Lillian wondered where she would find money to buy food for all of her children. She was not allowed to get a job because she was not an Egyptian. There was no mission board giving support to her orphanage's home. But Lillian knew that the Lord would provide, and somehow He always did. One morning, when there was no food left in the house, a young boy came to her door to deliver a message. "Is this the place where they take children with no homes?" he asked curiously after he had handed the note to Lillian. "Yes, it is," the missionary answered. "You will need a lot of money, won't you?" the boy observed. Lillian smiled. "I suppose we will," she told the boy, "but God knows all about it, and He will provide." Let me turn the page here. "He will provide for all of our needs." The boy stared at her with wonder in his dark face. Suddenly reaching into his own pocket, he put something in Lillian's hand, and then he turned and ran down the street. The missionary looked at the small pile of coins in her hand and counted 7 Egyptian piastres, which would make about 35 cents. 1 piastre was enough to buy a loaf of bread, and 7 would feed her little family for a few days. "Thank you, Lord," Lillian whispered. Soon the house was too small for Lillian's growing family, and the Lord provided money to buy a small piece of land beside the Nile River. "We will have to make our own bricks," Lillian told the children, and so they did. The Egyptian recipe for homemade bricks was probably still the same as it had been when the Israelites were slaves in Egypt. All the children who were old enough helped Mama Lillian dig up piles of dirt, mix it with chopped straw, and add water from the river to make mud. After stomping in the mud until it was mixed thoroughly, they would pack it into wooden molds and carry them to be baked hard in the brick kiln nearby. After months of hard work, the new brick orphanage was finally finished. How the children rejoiced as they thanked God for providing a comfortable new home. Day after day, Mama Lillian would ride around the countryside on her donkey, finding children in need. The Egyptians in the villages knew her well, and even though they were poor, they usually had something to share with her to help feed and clothe the orphans. Even when Lillian was away, the work of the orphanage went on. The big girls cooked and took care of the little children, while the boys made chairs to sell in town. In those days, the country of Egypt was trying to gain its independence from England. One spring, fighting broke out in the town where Lillian lived with her children. Gunfire crackled all around and many houses were burned. "Kill the Englishmen! Kill the Christians!" men shouted, and the sounds of battle were dangerously near. Mama Lillian calmly gathered her older children together. "Each one of you must carry 2 of the babies," she told them, "and we will go hide in the brick kiln." Under cover of darkness, the nearly 100 children slipped silently from their home and hurried to the empty brick factory. Lillian, her own arms full of babies, followed last. Inside the brick kiln, she counted her children. "Oh no," she gasped. 2 are missing. 2 of the babies. I must go back to the house and get them." "Don't, Mama Lillian," whimpered the older girls. "Don't go out there. You will be killed." But the missionary was determined. "I must save the babies," she whispered. "Pray for me that God will keep me safe." And she was off, sometimes running and sometimes crawling along the path to the orphanage. "Stop!" came a sudden shout in the darkness. "Who is that?" Shots rang out. "They are after me," Lillian thought fearfully. Dropping to the ground, she rolled into the ditch and lay still. Running feet pounded along the path as soldiers searched for her, the unknown figure that they had seen. Suddenly, Lillian realized that she was not alone in the ditch. Close beside her lay the crumpled form of a dead soldier. Nearer and nearer came the footsteps of the searchers, and Lillian prayed silently. All at once, the heavy boot trampled her shoulder as a soldier stepped right on her in the darkness. Lillian held her breath, but the man seemed to think he had only stepped on the dead soldier, for he kept right on going. Lying perfectly still, Lillian waited until the sound of boots and voices faded in the distance. Then cautiously hugging the ground, she continued. Quickly finding the 2 whimpering toddlers in their bedroom, she set out once more for the brick oven. "Oh, Mama Lillian, you're back! Thank God!" the older children cried out softly as the missionary sat down to rest on the earthen floor of the kiln. "Yes, God kept me safe as you prayed," the tired Lillian responded. "He is faithful." Now let's read our historical note before it gets too dark for me to read. Mama Lillian is the story of Lillian Trasher, an American missionary in Egypt in the early part of the 20th century. Her nighttime escape to the brick kiln happened in 1919. Later that year, Lillian had to leave Egypt, but she soon returned when the fighting was over and the work of the orphanage went on. In all, more than 8 8,000 children found a home at Lillian's orphanage where they were fed and clothed and taught to read the Bible. It is reported that every one of those 8,000 children grew up to be good men and women. What an amazing work a single woman went about in the land of Egypt so long ago. And again, this one woman, Mama Lillian, was listening to God's call upon her life. And God doesn't always call us to be missionaries. He might be calling you to spread His word by being a doctor right here in America or in the country that you live in. But we should be open to doing whatever it is that the Lord is calling us to do, just like Mama Lillian was. And this is Grandma Carla, and I love you.